It was a week before the new school term, and I had just arrived at Hogwarts. Dumbledore no doubt was already here. He usually arrived a few days earlier to check on the house elves and tend to other matters. As it is, he asked me to arrive several hours before the rest of the staff. I wasn't exactly sure why he had singled me out specifically, but I had my suspicions. His concern over the Dark Lord's inevitable return had been growing, especially after the appearance of the Dark Mark at the Quidditch World Cup this summer. Yes, it was likely he wished to discuss the role I would be expected to play when the time came. I sighed, already weary of the thought. As I settled into my sleeping quarters, I glanced around the room. It was far more lavish than anything I had known at Spinner's End, but such extravagance had never mattered to me. Practicality over luxury, utility over decoration. That was what I valued. And yet, I would be lying if I said I didn't appreciate even just slightly the contrast. In the far right corner, a recessed alcove housed a floor-to-ceiling bookshelf, its deep brown wood blending into the shadows. A single black leather armchair sat before it, accompanied by a small, dark-stained coffee table. A reading space, though I had little time for leisure. To the left of the bookshelf, a two-way fireplace cast flickering light into this room and the adjoining bath. Above the mantel, a large painting of Hogwarts dominated the space, its details sharp against the dim firelight. Beneath it, a long coffee table rested before a black leather sofa draped in a crimson blanket, positioned toward the warmth, though unnecessary. Against the right wall stood a queen-sized bed, draped in black velvet. A sheer black canopy, tied back with gold rope tassels, framed the space with Gothic excess. Beneath it, a crimson rug stretched across the stone floor, one of the few traces of colour. At the foot of the bed sat my black trunk with leather trim, offering storage and seating. Matching nightstands flanked the bed, each with silver candelabras, their ivory candles stark against the darkness. The castle's warm beige stone contrasted the heavy wood paneling and deep fabrics. Exposed wooden beams crossed the ceiling. The stained glass dome above filtered the lake's dim light into the room, its blue-green tones drifting faintly across the beams overhead. To the left of the fireplace, a dark oak door led into the bathroom, a luxury in itself. I had no reason to step inside at the moment. It's not as though it's changed since the summer holiday. Though, despite its excess, the room was quiet, still, a place of solitude. More than I needed, but not without purpose, I suppose. As I finish unpacking, I collapse onto the bed, pressing a hand over my face as I rub my temples in exhaustion. Too much to prepare before the new school year begins. And now, on top of it all, I must endure the Triwizard Tournament. Extra guests, extra distractions, a headache I have neither the time nor patience for. And then there's Igor Karkaroff. I exhale sharply, unwilling to entertain that thought any further. Sleep overtakes me before I realize it. For how long, I can't be certain. A knock at the door pulls me from my unintended rest. At first soft, then persistent. I sit up, already annoyed, as it continues. I storm over without a word, frustration mounting. The door flies open so quickly it takes a moment for the house elf standing there to register it. He startles, then squeaks and stammers as realization dawns.
A message from Professor Dumbledore, sir.
He manages, cowering slightly as he holds out a folded letter. I snatch the note from its grasp and the creature flinches. I barely spare it a glance as I unfold the parchment. It was indeed Dumbledore, and he was asking where I was, stating that my absence is unusual. I scan the room for a clock. My gaze lands on the time, and my stomach twists. Damn it! I must have dozed off longer than I realized. I'm 30 minutes late. I slam the door without so much as a thank you to the house elf, stride toward the fireplace and grab a handful of flue powder from the mantel. With a sharp flick of my wrist, I throw it into the flames. The headmaster's office! I bark before stepping into the fire and vanishing from sight. Upon arriving at the headmaster's office, I inadvertently inhale a mouthful of ash and soot from the fireplace. A cough racks my chest as I step out, frustration mounting with each breath. As my coughing subsides, I hear Dumbledore's familiar voice.
Ah, Severus, my boy, I'm glad you are here and unharmed. You were starting to worry me. Tardiness is not like you.
I finally catch my breath and lift my gaze to him, annoyed. He looks back with his usual gentle smile, entirely unfazed. I'm sorry, Headmaster. I manage, my voice still rough from the soot. I have no excuse. I dozed off by accident, much longer than I intended. Dumbledore smiles warmly and waves a hand dismissively.
It's quite all right. It technically isn't something I can't discuss in front of the other staff. I simply wanted to give you a heads up, so you weren't hearing it for the first time when I announce it at the staff meeting.
I raise an eyebrow. What? I asked sharply. You mean to tell me this little liaison of yours has nothing to do with the role I'll be taking on when the Dark Lord returns? I ask this because I know he wouldn't speak of my role as a double agent in front of the rest of the staff. If he intends to address them about this, then it must be something of a different matter. Dumbledore chuckles.
Oh, no, my dear boy, though that will come up later in the year, I assure you. Right now, I'd like to discuss something else, something regarding your classes.
I arch an eyebrow. My classes? You disapprove of my teaching, Headmaster?
Oh, no, not at all.
Dumbledore waves a hand dismissively, then pauses.
Though, if I may add, you do have a tendency to be rather severe with students outside your own house.
He peers at me over his half-moon spectacles, eyebrows raised in quiet amusement. I let out a sharp breath, turning my head away with deliberate arrogance, nose high in the air. Dumbledore chuckles.
Stubborn as always. But no, that is not why I called you here.
I glance back at him, curiosity flickering across my face despite myself.
Actually, I wanted to ask what you would think about taking on an intern.
My eyes widen in disbelief before narrowing into a scowl. I scoff. An intern? My voice is edged with disdain. Why would I need, no. Why would I want an intern? I cross my arms, my tone sharp and absolute. No, Dumbledore. You can assign this intern to someone else. I work alone. Dumbledore raises his eyebrows, smiles, and then says,
Well, to be truthful, Severus, I wasn't exactly asking you. I was asking what you thought, but whether or not you like it. You will be taking on an intern this year.
My scowl deepened, lips pressing into a thin line as I inhaled sharply through my nose. My eyes flickered with irritation, and for a moment I considered voicing my protest. But then, after a slow, measured breath, I leaned back slightly in my chair, folding my arms across my chest. "And who?" I asked, whilst gritting my teeth. "Is this unfortunate soul you've decided to tether to my side? Surely some incompetent dunderhead I've taught before. Judging by the timing, I assume they've only just graduated." My tone was laced with disdain, though I couldn't entirely keep the curiosity from creeping in. Dumbledore's blue eyes twinkled, maddeningly serene.
Ah, Severus. As it happens, you have never taught her. In fact, none of the staff has.
I raised an eyebrow. My interest piqued despite myself.
She was homeschooled.
Dumbledore added calmly. I stared at him, stunned and already irritated. Homeschooled? Before I could say more, he raised a hand to cut me off.
Don't let that fool you. I've met many brilliant witches and wizards who were homeschooled. More than you'd think.
He settled back in his chair.
Your new intern is a rather bright young woman, highly focused in potions. She reached out to me directly, requesting the opportunity to intern under one of our professors, specifically you.
My brow arched higher, this time sharpened with suspicion. I felt an odd flush rise. Confusion or something else, I couldn't say. Me? How does she even know who I am if she's never stepped foot in Hogwarts? Dumbledore chuckled, clearly amused.
Ah, you see, I believe she occasionally visited a friend during Hogsmeade weekends. So, I would assume her friend naturally wanted to show her around Hogwarts.
I let out a sharp, derisive breath, a sound that served as both my answer and my protest. Dumbledore ignored this as he continued.
And after reviewing her background and abilities, I found no reason to deny her.
I sneered. No reason? There are plenty of reasons. First of all, I have no interest in babysitting a starry-eyed child who thinks she can waltz into my classroom and—
She is not a child, Severus.
Dumbledore interrupted mildly.
She has completed her magical education and is eager to gain hands-on experience.
I let out a low breath of disdain and rolled my eyes, unimpressed.
She's quite a bright young woman.
He continued, unbothered.
Exceptionally dedicated to her studies, particularly potions. She even graduated a year early, only just turned 17 this year. She is rather impressive.
I scoffed. Impressive? Homeschooled students often lack discipline, not to mention social sense. Dumbledore arched a brow at me, unfazed.
An interesting comment coming from you. I've never known you to place much stock in social graces, Severus.
I levelled him with a look that could have curdled potion, but, as always, he remained maddeningly immune.
And as for discipline, well, I'd argue she may have more than most. Without professors breathing down her neck, or the structure of a traditional classroom, she had to be entirely self-motivated. Her studies required not only discipline, but determination.
He leaned forward slightly, voice gentler now.
Though she loved being homeschooled, she was always a bit disappointed she never got to experience Hogwarts. She's eager, not just to learn, but to be part of something she's only read about.
I didn't respond. But I felt my irritation shift slightly into guarded curiosity.
She's also interested in auditing a few electives,
he added.
Some she's only read about. For instance, care of magical creatures. Understandable, of course. I dare say hippogriffs don't typically roam the back garden.
He chuckled softly.
She comes from a rather unique family background,
he continued.
Her magical lineage runs on her mother's side, though most of the family hadn't produced a magical child in generations. In fact, there were 4 generations of squibs before her mother was born.
He folded his hands.
Her mother was the only one in her generation with magic, and her own education was limited. She learned primarily through books and the help of a trusted family friend. Someone who, I believe, attended Ilvermorny.
My eyes narrowed slightly. Dumbledore's tone shifted into something more thoughtful.
She was raised similarly. Though her mother did pass on what she knew, she believed it important to prioritize a strong Muggle education. So the girl's magical training was layered. Academic, yes, but scattered, a patchwork of self-study, inherited knowledge, and borrowed guidance. Her mother taught her most of the basics, but it was that same family friend who stepped in to help with what her mother and books could not: spellcasting, potion work, dueling, practical things. Still, most of what she knows, she learned alone.
He gave a small, approving nod.
She reminds me of someone,
he said with a wink. I felt my shoulders stiffen but said nothing. Dumbledore's eyes studied me carefully.
She's eager to deepen her knowledge, especially in potions. I believe you, of all people, can understand the desire to learn beyond the pages.
I furrowed my brow. Of course I understood. I had once been that student, clawing for every scrap of magical knowledge I could find because no one would hand it to me. I knew the hunger, the desperation, the defiance of limitations. But that was different. That is irrelevant, I muttered. I've neither the time nor patience to train an apprentice.
She's not here to be trained,
Dumbledore replied smoothly.
She's here to assist, observe, learn through application.
I narrowed my eyes. And if she proves to be nothing but a nuisance?
Then we'll reassess,
he said, the faint smile gone now.
But this isn't just for her benefit, Severus.
My jaw tightened. Oh, I see. Another one of your helpful little decisions to... What? Lighten my workload? Or are you suggesting I'm incapable of teaching on my own? Dumbledore's voice dipped lower.
In all the years you've worked here, Severus, have I ever once questioned your abilities?
I didn't answer. I looked away instead. That quiet disappointment in his voice struck a nerve I didn't care to acknowledge. He let the silence sit between us.
You know what's coming,
he said quietly.
The Dark Lord's return is no longer a question of if, but when. And when it happens, I'll be asking far more of you.
His words dropped heavily into the room.
With the Triwizard Tournament being hosted at Hogwarts, and Durmstrang participating, that means Karkaroff will be here as well, as you very well know.
He paused for a moment, then added,
Though I trust Karkaroff will not rejoin Voldemort when he rises to power again, that does not mean I fully trust him. That is partially why I hired Alistair for the Defense Against the Dark Arts position this year.
I blinked. You hired Moody? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled.
He'll help keep an eye on things, Karkaroff included.
I scowled. He'll be breathing down my neck, just as much as Karkaroff's. Dumbledore chuckled lightly.
Yes, well, I'd like you to be the one Karkaroff confides in. should he hear whispers of Voldemort's return. Moody will be observing from afar, but you, Severus, you will be on the inside.
I inhaled sharply through my nose and folded my arms in a cold, defensive knot.
And that,
he said,
is why I believe an intern will be of help to you. You will be stretched thinner than ever this year, and a capable set of hands in your classroom could prove useful.
I let out a sharp breath, tilting my head back slightly. And when? I asked, voice clipped. Am I to meet this intern? Dumbledore leaned forward slightly, folding his hands together.
Oh, I imagine she should be arriving any moment now.
As if on cue, a knock sounded at the office door. My jaw tightened as I turned my glare toward it. Dumbledore's smile grew.
Ah, I dare say, that is probably her now.
With a flick of his wand, the door swung open, revealing you standing just beyond the threshold.